to the brewery today. Have to do a few things to finish up a batch. The final stages of the brewing process involve usually transferring a beer to get it off the yeast into a fresh, clean tank, then clarifying the beer and carbonating the beer. So we're heading off to the brewery. We're going to do those steps today and figure might as well document it and everyone can see what that's all about. So what we're doing right now is we're preparing to transfer our Kolsch, which is in tank number 3 here, over to tank number 4 in order to clarify and carbonate it. We're basically pulling it off the yeast that's in the bottom, and we're going to actually save that yeast for a batch we're doing coming up on Friday. So the first step of this, what we're doing is we are purging the tank. So oxygen is one of the major enemies of beer. So how we're purging the tank is we're taking CO2, adding it to the tea, going through the hose, which the hose kind of wraps around, well, actually follow it there, wraps around there, comes down through here, and is connected to the bottom of this tank over here. Now, what we're doing is we're using the CO2 to pressurize this tank. And how we do that is standard atmospheric pressure is basically 15 psi. So what we're going to do is we're going to pressurize the tank until we get to 15 psi. That will mean there are roughly equal parts of equal parts of air and CO2 in the tank. Now the good thing is CO2 is considerably heavier than air. So after it sits for a little while, it will stratify with the CO2 in the bottom of the tank and the air in the top of the tank. And then what we're going to do is bleed the air out through the blow-off tube here, this tube, which is connected up to the very top and the highest point of the tank. So that allows us to get the air out of the tank, leaving the CO2 behind. After the purge and all the air and therefore oxygen is out of the tank, and then we will start the transfer. Once we get above, usually I try to get above 10 psi, that's to make sure the CO2 level is above the carb stone. Then what I'm doing is injecting CO2 into the tank via the carb stone, and the main purpose of this is just to purge the air out of the carb stone itself, because the first thing that's going to happen once we're done with this transfer is we're going to start carbonating it, and we're going to inject CO2 through that carb stone. What I don't want is for air to be in that carb stone, and then the first thing we're going to inject into the beer is air containing oxygen, and we're going to rapidly oxidize the beer. So purging the carb stone, then we'll get back to purging the tank, getting it up to 15 psi. All right, so we are done with the waiting period. Hopefully CO2 in the air should be pretty well stratified by now. So we're going to start draining the tank. How I do this is I hook up a sample valve to the end of the blow-off tube, and that allows me to finally control the bleed rate, because we don't want it to go too fast. If it goes too fast, you may get like a rippling in the boundary layer between the two gases, and they may start to mix. So you want it to go kind of slow, but not have it take all day. So here we go. I judge the flow rate basically by trying to make farting noises with my fingers when the air is coming out. It's kind of a funny way of doing it, but it seems to work pretty well. So here we go. We'll give that a shot. Not quite big enough then. There we go. That seems to be a good flow rate. The purpose of this manifold is, one, it allows me to inject CO2 right here for purging the oxygen out of the reception tank. Then what it also does is through this tea here, I can add additives to the batch if I need to. So for this particular batch, we're going to be adding 1 liter of biofine clear, which is a fining agent. What that does is it's actually a statically charged liquid that mixes with the beer. Then the charge of the liquid attracts any particles in the beer, proteins and yeast and whatnot, and then it's slightly heavier than water. So after the charge pulls the particles to it, it falls out to the bottom, and you can collect it, pull it off the bottom, leaving perfectly clear beer behind without having to filter the beer. Alright, so a full liter of the Biofine Clear, let me get a better handle on that, is in the hose. We've got the pressure on, all the valves are open. Now it's just time to open the tank. There we go, beer's flowing. Sorry, Michael, making a video. So this is the Kolsch. It's just about done carbonating, but as you can see, not clarified yet. So what we'll do is we'll come back tomorrow after the findings have had a chance to drop out all the haze and give you a shot of what it looks like after clarifying. Alright, and here we are. We added just a little more findings to the Kolsch from yesterday. Let's try and clear it out a little bit. And this is now what it looks like. You can see my fingers back through there quite nicely. Say hi, Nick.
What's up?